I've realized that if you want to help your community in any way, you first have to know how to help yourself. Let me just talk. Let me just sit back and have a conversation with myself, because this is getting too much. So I've been having a series of conversations with myself and with other amazing people who all seem to be going through one version or path of the same question. And it's basically, how do we position ourselves to properly work in service of our goals? And I think to like put the lens a little tighter around the creative community, how do we maneuver everything that's happening inside of social media and inside of our communities? And I've really been blessed to be a part of a lot of conversations and moments, and just being able to see, like, I before this episode happened, I was just watching someone's TikTok where they were talking about how even being a DJ now has a tinge of, or I forget the word you use, like contentized or something, but everything kind of feels not inauthentic to a fault, but there's a feeling of production that's kind of swept over everything that I think people are feeling. You know, people are aware of it. It's not as magical as it was before, which I don't think that inherently is the problem. I do think the issue comes, and this is where the issue was for me, when you are trying to create or cultivate community in the actual sense of the word, where it isn't just people who can look at your work and can like it, people who rather interact with it and find it useful and that you can engage with and find an understanding and build relationships with. That because of a lot of other things, it's kind of hard to reach that point. It's kind of hard to be intentional about it. And I think a lot of my trouble was me getting in my own way and kind of holding myself back from meeting that authenticity kind of marker. I think if you've been listening for a while, thank you. But if you haven't, the last 6 years of doing Procrastination Radio has been the most life-changing thing, one of the most life-changing things I think I've ever done. And I think, honestly, I think I'm still reaping the benefits of my initial approach to what I'm doing. And I think I'm constantly learning how to reposition the identity of what's going on to not just be better for others, but to be better for myself. And I think it started from such a selfish place, you know, and not selfish in any negative connotation of me just wanting to find other people who cared about art as much as I did. In that sense of it, I've been so successful. But I think as one would, somebody who's trying to create any type of platform or media network or conglomerate or whatever it is, I think you kind of get in the mindset of performance. And I don't think that's always the healthiest way to think of things. I think a lot of that has been colored, one, by social media. And, you know, I think a lot of the current currency in some senses is, what is your following? I think a lot of people do look to that to hold some idea of like what your value could be to them. And I've always heard in different spaces people saying that you never know who's looking at your work, and that's so true. But I think on my end, it was almost like a fear, and I feel like I've talked about this so many different times on the show. I feel like the fear of being seen is also a very, very powerful, very destructive thing. You know, being seen in any light that isn't what you think is the right one to have in your head. I think that was the biggest thing that was like truly holding me back from connecting with people for a long time. And I think anytime I forget that the idea is to connect with these people and not just look for something that is going to do well or is going to go viral. you know. I think inherently there was a feeling of like I don't want that to happen, because when people would ask, it's like no, I don't really care about the numbers, but that that's not the truth, and that's something that I've had to come to terms with. It's not how I feel because I think there is very very honestly, like I've had a conversation with the homie Dalen from a rabbit's hole. We were talking about that, just how that number does bring a lot of things to you. It brings you more access. It brings you a sense of more connection, but that doesn't truly guarantee that you are genuinely communicating or intentionally communicating with any group of people. I think it's funny being able to see kind of the back end of that working for an agency and looking at accounts and different people and how the market's running and trends and all these different things, and like all of these businesses and people and personalities are trying to find and cultivate genuine community. But I think in the grand scape of everything, people are going about it in very cookie cutter ways. I think there's a culture right now of a lot of people trying to deliver on a promise of like I can get you to this place. Like I got to 3 billion followers in 7 days. Here's exactly what I did to do it. And I think that's very dangerous because there's so many there's so many different things that make somebody get to that point, there's so many other things that are holding people back from getting to that point. And I think trying to gamify community has been one of the most dangerous things that I think I've seen. And I think there's been a lot of really good moments inside of the pursuit of genuine community. I guess if that was this conversation is going to be about, like all this stuff with like the run clubs and yoga clubs, like that's amazing. That's beautiful to see people gather in a space together. For at least the ones I know, communicate in genuine ways and move in a genuine way and have a cool, like an amazing impact on the communities that they're serving. But I don't know. I think everything now just has to be a brand, so it feels weird trying to move inside of that landscape where everything is marketing. Like everything is marketing. I feel like that's the one thing like that I hear from the majority of people, myself included, that feels really weird. I think it feels weird for a creative or an artist to feel like they have to either put out work to show their process to then try to use that to promote something instead of going the other way around, which, and this is not saying, I don't know, like I not criticizing anybody who's doing this and does it and doing it well, because it works and it's necessary. I think I wouldn't be here without people doing that exact thing. But I think there was a time and space where that wasn't the one thing to do for everybody. You know, I think we have to have more time to be really bad at things before we try to be experts at things. And that's something that I've had to call myself out on, that my friends have called me out on. I think perfectionism is just something that comes inherently for some creatives. And I'm so envious of the creatives who can just like move and put stuff out and just kind of bounce back and forth. But even that might not be the truth. That just might be how it comes off. But I think there is a fear of being seen degree to perfectionism that comes in some people, where it has to be so specific that sometimes that version of it doesn't exist and it just has to come out. I know for me, I've recorded this 2 other times and just not been happy with how it felt or how it flowed. And I think it then gets muddy because you're like, okay, what part of this is me just being a detail oriented creative, and what part of this is me being a perfectionist? What part is helpful, what part is destructive, and then where do they cross over? Because they constantly do, and a lot of times they feel like the same thing. And that's just been really interesting for me to try to maneuver in so many different aspects. I think being somebody who has the privilege of working full time in a creative job, I've had to come to terms with understanding what I truly want to be doing. I feel like for a while I was moving inside of the comfort of like, this is something that is working for me, or that's letting me be able to pay the bills. And now it's kind of turned to like, well, am I okay with the way that I'm doing things, or am I okay with the way that I'm feeling after this, or the way that I'm thinking about things, you know? And I think very honestly, like I applied a lot of those methodologies and being so performance driven onto a product that was coming from a place of love, you know? And I feel like those things can be partners, but I don't think they should be one thing. I think they have their functions and different things for different reasons, but I think trying to force something to work is not gonna make it work any harder in some cases. But I think really moving everything back and trying to not trying, but asking myself why I'm still doing it. Not even, not even. My friend Kennedy said something really important to me. And I think that that's what made me want to just cement this into this kind of not new direction, maybe like a new breath, like a new pivot. It's not even, I think the intention of this was there the whole time, but I think when somebody who knows you really well, and this has happened with so many people, so like this was like the 100th drop in the bucket, but I know that I'm really blessed because I have so many people who know me very well, who know me creatively, who know me personally, who know me inside of that mixture of all of it, who know me as a designer, as just a friend, um, can see that I'm really really bad at promoting myself or talking about myself. Um, and I've had to verbalize that a lot of why pro has not been connecting with people is because of my fear of being seen. And so I've put my very abstract and detailed trauma onto my child. um and you know, my child don't got as many friends, got as many homies as it could, you know, because of that. And I think in that there was a conversation between Kendi and myself where she was challenging me to show more of the messiness that is my process, and show more of the rabbit holes and the trails that go on inside my head, and not make everything so pretty. I think, and I appreciate everybody who says something about it. A lot of people will hit me and mention that they really like the branding, and I think, I think in a way, like I think I put so much detail and thought into how that worked that a lot of other things just kind of stopped working because of that. I think, I don't know. I just feel like nobody knows anything. You know, I feel like the network is approachable, but I feel like it's like that one person who everybody kind of has an idea of, but nobody really knows much about. And that is no way to get to my end goal, which is creating authentic conversation with creatives. Like I've been saying for months, I was like, I need to figure out how to how to build more stories and collaborate with more peoples around the motto and kind of the creed of the brand, which is art is air. And the idea that procrastination radio is supposed to connect and foster conversations between all of the artists and creatives who really are about it. You feel me? Like, who really care, who live and breathe it, you know? And I was telling DJ Oat Milk in a meeting I had with them, kind of regarding a lot of these conversations a couple weeks ago, that I think Pro has done a really good job at being a producer of shows, um, and putting out content and having good branding. But if the message isn't being delivered, then there's really no point into doing any of that, you know, because if the foundation is shaky, then these things can't last or can't stand. I think it is taking in all of those very confusing things about how do you package this for social, and how do you maneuver this in person? How do you do? I think once you realize that you have to, again, you have to make sure your foundation is straight. You have to make sure your why is constantly just moving through every decision you make, and that the end goal matches where, you know, where you're trying to move from. Um, because it just, you know, you can put out thousands of posts a day and get millions of followers, but I think there is such a different feeling when you can connect with people and feel like you are moving something together, you know? I think there's been a lot of conversation about building around, or kind of building up whatever we do in support of one another. And I've been really blessed again with like a bunch of other accounts, and I would name them all, but it's a lot, and I'm probably gonna put them up on the screen now. But being able to have conversation with them, and like I said, like finding out we're all facing the same thing, because we as humans do get caught up in all of the messiness that is like the tools that we're trying to use. Like we're too focused on trying to understand the tools, which is necessary to be successful. But in doing that, we're forgetting like the reason we're trying to build whatever we're trying to build. And it's like I mentioned before, it's just been really cool to hear people who have been in the game for longer or for shorter, or who've done things differently, to for them to just like start having conversations about this, because it is something that is now genuinely affecting people. You know, if we're so busy trying to build all this community in this invisible fourth space that is the internet, what happens when we can't translate we can't translate that to an event, or can't have people show up for something that matters, you know? I think there's so much more, there's so much to the idea of like how much power we have as people, and how important the things that we are doing are to people we might not even know, and how easily we could all shut any of that down from happening by trying to be people that we aren't, or trying to do something for, no, I said it good the first time, I don't gotta keep going. But it's it's very frustrating how stubborn I can be in that part of it, because you kind of do want to trust that these internet folks know what they're talking about, or that you can count on an app or a platform being reliable and not changing an update or switching an algorithm. And I think it does feel like a version of insanity, because like you just keep going back to the same thing, expecting it to be different. And what truly has to happen is we just have to show up for ourselves, and we have to make sure that we are putting our current moment to moment most authentic foot forward, so that we do connect with people who are also either seeking that out or doing the same thing, so that when we do meet together in whatever facet or function it is authentically. And then by proxy, we're building community, we're building communication. And I think that patience, that patience of it is the most frustrating part. And I don't even think I've always thought of it like that. But I think there was a point where I realized, and this has been reinforced by many of these conversations I've been having, that that form of growth is going to take a long time. It is not going to be something that happens quickly. Derek G, case in point. I think everybody, I think when anybody becomes kind of a household name to some degree in different kind of subsections or niches, I think there, for some people, is an understanding that these people didn't just get there. Like, they've been doing the work for years. And like for Derek G, he's been doing the work for years and been putting in the time and effort. And you can sense that because of the way he speaks, the way he delivers himself, the way he communicates with brands, the way he does everything he does. Shout out Derek G. I love you so much. Like, honestly, like, you've really been one of these pivotal kind of fundamental pushes that kind of helped me snap back into being intentional about the work I'm doing. But I brought Derek G up because his work and the work that he does feels so other to me in a way that I didn't expect it to be as big as it was, because he's just nerding out on stuff. And then I forget, like, I think that's the funny thing, is like, you forget who you are, you forget what you do, and you try to be in service of this persona that you put on the internet, no matter if nobody knows it or is aware of it, you know? Like, you try to stay so steadfast to this character that you built that you forget to enjoy things. And I think that was the thing that I saw in his work immediately. I was like, oh, he just really likes this stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm drawn to that, so I'm gonna follow. And I was like, oh, that's how that works, you know. And it's just, it feels almost idiotic just saying it out loud, because it's like, yeah, but I feel like a lot of times it just takes you to get either like beat up enough, or enough things are failing in your control that you're just like, okay, yeah, maybe I have to go back to the drawing board and be myself, you know. So it's just been a really interesting couple of weeks. It's been a really interesting couple of months. And I think I'm excited to challenge myself to grow. And I don't think I gravitate to that type of challenge often enough. And I think in my life, I've encountered a lot of new people, a lot of new energies that have kind of opened that possibility up. And it's a blessing to be supported in that. And I know that I genuinely love, and I was telling one of my homies, that I was crying putting together the pro list one week, because I got so excited that, like, oh, I could put all these songs together and I could share this with people, and I can listen to something that I put together. It's just funny how excited I get still when somebody asks for the link to it. It's just like, that feeling is what should lead everything. That love, that passion. And I've been able to see how scary it is the other way, because you just operate from a position of fear, and you operate from a position of, like, almost like lust. Like, I just need, maybe gluttony is a better word, I don't know, of I just need, without even putting it into the context of different situations, different people, different things. Like, I need what they have. I want this thing. I want to get to this place, you know? And again, that very specific line of where goals meet and then just like unrealistic expectation is. And then just in with that, like, how often are you revisiting that? How often do you find yourself asking those questions that like make you think about everything differently, Because I think to truly be of service is to understand why you serve. And again, I'm very excited to figure out what that means for Procrastination Radio and how that will be communicated throughout everything, because I know now there is no other way I wanted to do it, and there is no other thing that I would want to be attached to the identity of anything that I touch. So I think I've said everything that's on my mind, and I do want to have a conversation with anybody who has any thoughts or agreed or disagreed about anything that you heard today. So wherever you can, if that's in the comments, if that's in the DM, if you got my line, hit me. I just want to thank you again for listening. And wherever you are, whether it's day, night, evening, stop procrastinating because your dreams are waiting for you. Peace, peace.